Sometimes life is yikes.
And that's okay. You're not alone. Welcome to Yikesland. Hi, guys, and welcome to Yikesland, episode 20.
Dose. I didn't know you were waiting for me. 22.
I thought it would be better if I didn't give him a warning. And it was.
It was.
We are so happy that you are here with us on another Tuesday. It's a great Tuesday because you are here with us existing in the world, whether you are sad or not. Either way, I'm still glad you're here. I'm glad that you are here, Jelani.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
We are glad that you guys are here and listening to us, or not listening, or doing your own thing, whatever it takes to make it to the next Tuesday. Yeah. If you want to communicate with us, you can find us on Twitter or Facebook. You can find us on Instagram at Yikesland_podcast, or email us at yikesland@gmail.com. Maybe we can start getting hate mail soon. Would that be nice?
You can
People
send.
who are
you
like,
can send the
"You should
hate
be
mail.
sad."
You can send the hate mail to the garbage at the dumpster.
I would be honored if someone just wrote to me like, "You should be sad." You know what I mean? Because the thing is that I know everybody watching this is like pretty supportive.
Yeah.
And so I'd be like, oh, a wild new person.
You've encountered a wild troll.
Yeah. So I will start this podcast off the way we always do. Jelani, what are you? No, I'm just kidding. How are you?
What is Jelani? Well, let me see. Let me tell you. Back in my... Oh, how am I? Okay. Yeah. Well, I didn't even hear you. Yes, how am I doing? Well, recently, in the past couple of podcasts, I think I've talked about, like, I've been feeling kind of sluggish. I've been feeling a little, there's like this fog of, I don't know, depression over my life at the moment. I don't know what it is. It's been feeling a little sluggish. I feel myself rising out of it, I think. I'm pulling myself out of that little fog. I mean, starting to buckle down and refocus on things again, so I'm starting to like be able to be more clear on like where everything is. I've had to make a couple changes in my life about a couple things that I'm doing, health-wise and things like that.
That depressed person constant ability to reinvent
to
themselves.
Adapt, to change. I like it. I can be better. I have $10 and I can change myself to something better. The $10 man. So I've been changing up a little bit of my schedule. I've been wanting to refocus on things. I think I've been a little bit unfocused. I think I talked about that. Being unfocused for me has been kind of a mainstay thing that has happened. It's a consistency, like something that's constant, whereas like I get unfocused and then there's too many different things happening. So I decided to reevaluate everything I'm doing. Let me cut out what I can cut out and refocus on things that I want to focus on,
Okay.
And so I've been diving a little bit more into like the show stuff, the podcast network stuff and things like that. So been trying to refocus my depression I guess, and trying to like get myself more on track. So I think I've been doing okay. I've been rising out of it. I think it's pushing me to do a little bit more, being a little bit different. So I think I'm on a new track.
That's good.
I wouldn't say a better track, but I'd say a new track, and let's see where this leads us.
I'm glad. Yeah, I know the feeling of being not quite focused can be really distressing, at least for me, where you feel like you're supposed to be doing better or doing something different, but you like kind of can't, and you're a little bit like strung between a lot of things. So I know that feeling, and that can be hard and lead to a lot of self-blame too, I think, for people like us who are trying to like get creative things done, trying to produce stuff and make it quality and then make that stuff even better, and feeling like you're not focusing on or advancing on your specific things can be frustrating, because you're like, but this is the purpose of me.
Yeah. And I've been pulling myself 100 different ways.
Yeah.
And it's been like, oh, what am I really doing? Where is everything going? What's up with, blah, 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 blah. And I just kind of feel like, let's focus on a couple things and let's get on the track of like, all right, let's see where this goes if I just focus on a couple things and let's start moving forward, So that's where I'm going. How are you doing?
I didn't think about this, so now I have to think about this. I'm okay. I'm good. I'm not okay as in middle ground. I'm like good or bad at any given moment.
Okay.
I definitely having personal ups and downs. But I have also some things that I am looking forward to or that are going really well in my life that kind of keep me going.
Okay.
So it's not, how sometimes you're just okay, like everything's going meh, nothing's going bad, and nothing's going good. Mm-hmm. For me, it's the opposite of that. Like a bunch of things are going good and a bunch of things are going bad, but I'm still here, so that's what matters.
It's the most important thing is that you're still here.
Yeah.
So we want everyone to still be here, making it every single day to the next day to every Tuesday. Not to just be here for the show, but just to be here in the world, in Yikesland.
Yeah, and I think I've been leaning on friends. Sometimes when I get too sucked into like work or my relationship, I won't be around friends as much. Like I become codependent either to like one other person or very often just like codependent to work. And so having some of that stuff go worse reminds me that, I have like all these other friends that are a support system that I really connect with in ways that are also unique and important. And so it's kind of giving me more time to like spend time with other people, have really good conversations with other people.
Good.
And like put more of myself into that, as opposed to sometimes when you're behind the bar, you're like finger guns, chatting, but you don't necessarily make time to be like, here's my real feelings. 'Cause you're thinking, I'm here to serve somebody. So like they're not here to get my real self unless they're my actual friend.
Yeah.
So just having some conversations, even some conversations are just like texting or Facebook messaging, because people in 2019 don't have time to see each other.
Yeah,
To have those conversations, but actually be present in them. Mm-hmm. I had a video chat with my best friend from college last week. That was really good, and that's something we haven't done in a while. And then I have one friend in town now and another friend from New York who is coming by next weekend and stuff. So I've been getting to physically see people that I don't usually see. And that means I have to like do stuff that I don't normally do, like go to brunch or whatever, where if it's just me by myself, I'm always like, you don't deserve to spend that money on just you should save it, like use your money wisely, etc. And obviously you can't do that infinitely because then you run out of money, but but I think it's fine, like reasonably, to be spending that time with people and stuff like that. So I think those are all positive things that have come out of some other negative feelings, so I am grateful for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to break up like the monotony a little bit, kind of like change it up a little bit. That we adapt, we change, we do what we got to do, and reach out to those who are our support system. We talked about that before, and kind of we talked about like the break glass in case of emergency, depression emergency, and like support system around you and friends that you haven't seen in a long time and friends who are around you are definitely important to keep in your life. Even though like if you kind of become codependent on just like one person all the time, that becomes like sometimes it can be a hindrance because it's always focusing on just the one person, and then you kind of limit your circle. But kind of spreading out and having those conversations, that's bravo. I'm super happy that you're able to reach out to people you haven't talked to in a while, so that's good.
Well, and I mean, even for me especially, it won't necessarily be like, sometimes it'll literally be me being codependent with work, where even things are going really well, like my life's going well, but I am still focusing on work like an unhealthy amount. And I'm kind of, I've talked about this in previous episodes, and I'm probably going to keep talking about it like an annoying amount so that I can remind myself. But I'm trying to work on not thinking that I only have self-worth because of productivity. It's like, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket.
And
so all of that stuff is really tied together, where I'm like, like things are going well, so I'm going to put literally all my thoughts and emotions and time into doing work so that I can get more of a kick out of how productive I'm being, so that I can feel like I deserve to be alive. And it's like, that's not why you deserve to be alive. Yeah. And I could tell somebody else that easily. If they were telling me this, I'd be like, that's not why you deserve to be alive. You deserve to be alive because of you stuff. It's not like that you have to do X amount of work to like be worthy of walking on this earth. But like when it's just me, I don't remember to tell myself that in
I think
all the in-between moments.
I think that we've talked about it before, of us just having like one of the biggest hurdles that a person in our state can have is like, oh, we just have a problem of like taking our own advice and taking our own help, you know. So that happens. It happens. But you know, super glad that things are going, you know, you're breaking it up a little bit and doing some different things. Good. Shall we hop into topic of the week?
Yeah. So speaking of hate mail.
Oh boy.
Speaking of hate mail, our topic for the week is criticism.
Yes.
And that's probably a heavy one, especially for people like us who are, I'm definitely myself very much of a perfectionist, and I theoretically love and thrive on constructive criticism, but there's all different forms of criticism.
Yeah.
And I think being depressed or anxious or just like a neurotic person, you have a lot of voices in your head that are also being critical of you. And then, you know, everybody is going to have, haters going to hate, everybody's going to have like external voices of criticism, you know, and some of that criticism is legitimate or not, or it is legitimate, but it shouldn't have been said that way and stuff like that. So today we are going to talk about kind of the way that our mental health ties in with external criticism, how internal criticism can make you feel stronger sometimes, weaker sometimes, and our personal experiences with that.
Yeah.
This is a topic I love and I'm really excited about. So
super glad. So criticism, this is, it's kind of a large topic because there's so many different avenues that this can take. There are the external forces, you know, there are the criticisms from, you know, you get them from friends, family. You can, you know, even the smallest things. I mean, we've hinted on it slightly before, of like sometimes someone just says something and it kind of just like throws you off a little bit. It's like, oh, okay, all right, you know. And then people who are in our state of mind with our, you know, always having problems with their mental health and depression, we have that, you know, like you said, just the internal voices, you know, the one, you know, we've talked about, I think we had an episode where we talked about the internal voice.
The lies your depression tells you. And
the problem is you have internal criticism, but it's very harsh. I would say it's probably the harshest criticism you'll ever receive is your internal voice, constantly, you know, telling you about like whether or not you're worthy of being here, if you're worthy of doing, you know, if you're doing things right, and you're always second guessing yourself. You know, I kind of have that problem where the internal voice is always just going off a little bit. You know, certain things set me off and it's just like the kind of spiral a little bit, but you know, it's always just internal voices just yelling out at you and just kind of bringing you down a little bit. And it's always, it's a difficult situation, and it's a difficult like landmine to navigate internally when you're also trying to take in constructive criticism, which can be positive. You know, it can be helpful to, you know, bettering yourself, if you will. And it's, I don't know, for you, what's your, you know,
what's my background on this?
What's your background on this?
Well, probably, so obviously I think, you know, you guys can let us know what you experience in your own internal landscape. But I think it's a pretty common thing that people who are, you know, depressed or anxious or have other mental health issues are pretty critical of themselves. And for me, I've always been a person that inside I'm like constantly picking apart everything that I'm doing in a way that doesn't necessarily actually make me better, you know, in a way that's just purely unhealthy. And I think, you know, there's a place for criticism in the world and in relationships and in your relationship to yourself. It's not like you are supposed to pretend everything is good and perfect all the time, because, you know, otherwise how would we improve and how do we make things better? But there's also very much you need to pay attention to, and especially when you're a sad boy like me, are those voices even productive, or are they just trying to hurt you? And so, for example, I used to have an eating disorder, like I talk about, or I'm in recovery from one. And so I have had a lot of voices that are critical of my appearance and my body and stuff like that. And those are almost easier than the other voices that are about my brain, because they're almost purely just like, that voice is a piece of shit. You're like, oh, literally it serves no purpose for you to be looking at yourself in the mirror super closely and picking apart what things are or aren't good about your face. Those ones are kind of easy for me to be like, nah, all of those voices are bad, none of those voices should be listened to. And I have, for that kind of thing, a couple of different ways that I attack the voices. And they're not, I guess for me, they're not like literal voices. They're just like things that like pop up in my head against my will, but it doesn't sound like anything.
Yeah. Yeah, please. We're not like hearing just like, oh, what? We're not hearing things like that. It's just, that's what the label we're putting on it.
For me, one thing that I do to test is, I think, would I say this to another person? And if you wouldn't say it to another person, then you probably shouldn't be saying it to yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you would say it to another person, you shouldn't be saying it to another person like that, and you should be nicer. But a lot of that stuff, I'll think like, okay, would you think about that when you were looking at someone else's body? No, you wouldn't. That would be a mean thing to do. And I also I don't organically have critical thoughts about other people's bodies or appearances. Like I mostly don't, I'll find people attractive, but I mostly don't care. You know what I mean? And so I'm not looking for I don't know, for example, if with eating disorder stuff, I'm not looking for stretch marks on other people and being like, oh, those are bad. But then I'll look at my own sometimes and be like, oh, those are bad. And it's that double standard where you have some insanely, you have this abusive standard for yourself where you're like, what's an okay thing to say to me? That I'm ugly because blah, blah, blah. And you shouldn't say that to other people. And so you shouldn't say it to yourself.
Yeah.
And then another thing that I do to combat that stuff is I'll literally be like, if I catch myself kind of in a spiral of criticism about my body or my appearance, I'll literally think, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were a hideous monster now. And kind of the hyperbole of that will make me laugh and be like, okay, everything that's happening now is stupid and that's not a good use of your time. And it's okay to feel those negative feelings, because a lot of them are just informed by the society that we grow up in and the criticism or standards that we are being given by the patriarchy and also the media and people who are trying to sell us stuff. And so, you're not bad for feeling those things, but it's understandable that they would happen. And so I have some kind of really clear cut ways for shutting down criticism with regards to physical appearance and with things that trigger me from my eating disorder. But I don't really have as good of a toolbox for criticisms that I have for my brain and emotions that are things that result from ADHD or OCD or depression or anxiety or whatever mix of things you'd like to say that I have. So that's kind of a toolbox that I'm looking to work on, because it's, for some reason, it's not as clear cut for me and it's not as easy for me. And part of that is because you pretty much should never be criticizing someone else's body or your own body. It's easy to say that that's pointless, but there are some things that are, I don't want to say wrong with my personality or character, but things that I'd be happier if I worked on them, or the people I love would be happier if I worked on them, or they're not productive for me. And so there are legitimate critiques that should be made there and things that I'd like to work on. And so it's a little bit harder for me to just be listen to no negative voices, because that's not something that I agree with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a fine line to skirt constructive criticism, especially when it's within yourself, and the harsh criticisms that you have on yourself. And again, 9 times out of 10, 99% of the time, you're always harsh on yourself.
Yeah.
You're the harshest critic is yourself. That's why people who are in creative fields constantly hate their own work because they're constantly critiquing their own thing. And it's really hard to work on that toolbox where you're, you work on that toolbox of like trying to just alleviate yourself of the harsh criticism and try to be more constructive in your own, in your own mind,
Yeah.
and for us, like
focusing on the harsh stuff too much can kind of blind you to the legitimate stuff, or like the stuff that you do want to work on, where you're so busy feeling bad about yourself for all these things that you decided you should feel bad about, that you don't like, that you just feel bad and you don't actually get to work on anything that would make you happier.
Yeah.
And so like that can be difficult too, is like if you're not parsing it and you're not fighting away one type of criticism, then like you're not even going to get to that place where you can make changes that are helping you, like I feel like you're making right now.
Yeah, especially when you're emotionally compromised, like we are. Like some of us wear our emotions on them.
Emotionally compromised. What a dark phrase.
Was that dark? I didn't think it was dark. But for us,
because it sounds like spies.
Yes,
Yeah.
for us being emotionally compromised like we are. I mean, we're on a turn of a dime, we can turn into Sadsville real fast, and it's very difficult to skirt that line. Like for someone who was completely mentally healthy and they didn't have depression or anxiety or anything like that, even just taking just outside criticism it can be difficult for them sometimes. But it's something that we have to learn to try and get there. Also, just try not to give out that kind of harsh criticism as well. Like you're saying, it's what's the oldest adage in the world, where it's like, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, and you treat people the same way you would want to be treated. But that also kind of goes double for yourself, where it's like treat yourself like you want to be yourself,
want to be treated.
Because 9 times out of 10, when we're in our states that we are in, and become emotionally compromised, we don't want to treat ourselves the way we want to treat ourselves.
Yeah.
Really, we end up going a little bit too far.
Well, and maybe some of it has maybe to do with tone, where a criticism might be legitimate, but the way that you're talking about it is so harmful to yourself or to others that it's going to prevent any sort of action on that. Because if you're expressing it in such a toxic way, like either somebody else isn't going to listen or you're not going to listen to yourself. So it's I'm going to bring it back to another physical example, but it's like fine and probably a good thing if you're like, oh, I want to start working out to be healthy, because like exercise is good for all of us. But if the way that you phrase it is like, oh, I need to work out because I'm like a fat piece of shit or something, that's a terrible way to talk to yourself, and don't do that.
That's how I tell myself every single day. I look in the mirror and was like, what are you?
So yeah, you kind of, I think with a lot of that stuff, tone matters, where you have to think about, okay, does this criticism help me? But then it's also like, how am I talking to myself about the thing? And once again, it becomes very clear that I'm great at dealing with the eating disorder aspect of this and terrible at coming up with other examples of how to be kinder about my other stuff.
Yeah.
But, I think if I could theoretically find a way to do that, I might be better at, if I could speak to myself about constructive criticism the way that I would speak to others, where I'm like, this is a problem with you and we're going to change it together, but like, it's okay, I still love you the way you are, but also we're going to change, but also you're okay, but also don't, then that would be a lot healthier than like, oh, you're worthless because you procrastinated today, which is a thing that I think a lot.
It's any type of criticism, like especially internal ones, but like outside external ones as well, can stick with us for quite some time. Even depending on, like, even if it was constructive, like we being in our emotionally compromised states can take it the wrong way, and it's kind of a fine line of just like you have to take everything in and kind of stand back. You don't want to. What's the word? You don't, the old adage of just like, you don't want to stand too close to the elephant because you can't see the entire thing.
I've actually never heard that.
No. So
makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
need an explanation.
You don't stand too close to the elephant because you can't see the entire elephant because it's so big. There's a bigger picture in play here. You got to stand back, take it for what it is, and like take it all in and then kind of process it. Like, the thing is, I think that we rush through because we wear our emotions on our sleeves, and we rush to getting ourselves hurt. And I think because we have this weird internal criticism, mechanism where we heighten everything. So I mean, someone could say something. I was like, hey, I don't know. I was gonna say something. It was like, hey, that jacket looks pretty old. And then like in your mind is like, oh, you're shit because like you're wearing shitty clothes and this and that and whatever. Because we can take an external criticism and internally heighten it up, and that's us just rushing through it. But like, I think taking a moment and taking a breath, if you will, can aid. I think that's one of the biggest things that we have to do. It's like, we have to take a moment, because 9 times out of 10, whenever we in our states like end up being compromised and end up spiraling like we talked about before, I think it's always because we've rushed into hurting ourselves. We pushed ourselves so fast into being sad and being harmful to ourselves and criticizing ourselves and heightening it up. It's moves so fast that you become paralyzed and you're not able to even pull yourself out of it after that. It's almost kind of just like, now you're here because you've pushed yourself so far so fast. I think we all have like to take a moment and just kind of just slow down. That's almost like a way that I'm thinking about it, like a theory, if you will, hypothesis. Yes, that's right. That's how we're doing it. Hypothesis. I'm not gonna say that word anymore, but yes, I think it's something that it's a theory that I'm working with at hearing you speak about it and talk about it and like kind of like looking inwards. I think no matter what, like the key thing is the internal criticism can make anything, even if it's just something that we're doing heightened. But if there is an external criticism, we have then the external and the internal that like to take into account there, because we can take that external and heighten it up to the 1000th degree, and so we kind of have to take a breath, if you will, and kind of like let it fall like a duck off water's back. Nope, that's not the phrase. Like a water off a duck's back, that's the word. Yes.
Well, I think you have a really good point there, which is that when you are someone who spends so much time thinking critical stuff about yourself, you can feel criticism from other people too harshly if it kind of corroborates like I sort of walk about the world with a theory that I'm like secretly terrible and I'm just waiting for everyone to find out that like I'm dumb and everything I do is bad and I'm a failure and I'm not a real adult, and I'm just like waiting for people to figure that out. And so if somebody says something to me that sometimes wasn't even meant as a criticism, or sometimes it is, that corroborates my like cruel theories about myself, I'll be like, oh, so it's true then. Everything that I thought about myself that was bad must also be true. Yeah. And the thing is, like, sometimes I'll do that for stuff where somebody didn't even mean something in a hurtful way. I just like decided to take it that way for fun, or sometimes people are going to say critical stuff about you and like maybe they should have and maybe they shouldn't. And it's important to recognize as an adult that you don't have to take everyone's criticism. And so sometimes even if somebody said a thing about you that you also thought was bad about you, that doesn't necessarily mean it's true, or it doesn't necessarily mean it's something that you should feel bad about. It can just be like they happened to be mean to you in the same way that you're mean to you. But that's something that I struggle with a lot, especially in relationships where I am obviously like you're more vulnerable with people that you're close to. So like your friends or people that you're in a relationship with, or your family, where for me at least, like if a stranger said something critical, I'd be like, hi, I don't care, it's a stranger, I don't care about their opinion. But if it's like my partner saying something that corroborates a terrible theory I had about myself, I'm like, oh, so everything is bad then. And it's like, nah, maybe they shouldn't have said that about you. Maybe they should have been nicer, and like they were the shitty person in that situation. And I'm also the shitty person for thinking that stuff about myself and setting up this situation in which I was bound to get hurt because it's like having a bruise, and it's like, this is a bruise that I inflicted by thinking so much bad stuff about myself. But now if somebody so much as brushes against that bruise, it's going to hurt a lot because I already bruised it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? And I don't mean it's my fault, like I'm actually terrible. I just mean if I could be kinder to myself, then other people's criticisms would bounce off a little bit better.
Yeah. It's the key goal of like to work off your bruising metaphor here. Another metaphor is like, yeah, we are kind of working with a wound, you know, we are working with something that's trying to scab over, that's trying to, you know, heal up. And if we keep, you know, we do the most harshest damage to that scar, to that wound there by continually picking at it. You know, we're picking at it, you know, digging at it and doing whatever, and it's not healing over. And then of course, when someone comes by and, you know, brushes by it, obviously it's going to hurt a lot more because you haven't already, like, you know, softening the skin. You've been like creating this thin, like, you know, skin on yourself. And for now, I think like what I'm looking at is like, yeah, I think that we, and especially me too, was like, I got to stand back, where it's like, I got to take a breath. I got to, like, you know, simplest thing in the world, you know, someone says something, I got to take it.
Take a moment and be like, did they really mean
break
to
it down?
Yeah, be like, did they really
look
mean
at
to be
hurtful,
sides. Or is it just something that I'm thinking they meant to be hurtful, one. And then two, like, even if they meant to be hurtful, was that like a fair thing to say, or is that just like a mean thing to say that they shouldn't be saying? Because like, we're all humans, you know, in an ideal world we would never be mean to people we care about, but realistically it happens sometimes. You're tired or you're stressed or you like feel like lashing out, and you shouldn't do it, but like everybody says mean stuff sometimes. And so two is like, should they even have said the mean thing, you know? And then like, if there is a legitimate criticism there where it's like, okay, like I'm really looking at it now calmly and I'm trying to figure out if that's something I need to change about myself, you have to think like, is this something I want to change about myself because of me reasons, or is it something I want to change about myself because somebody said something critical about it and then I think I have to change it? You know, so I think that taking a moment or several moments is a really good suggestion. And then it might even be that for the whole day you don't even, like, you try to not even consider that criticism, you try to not consider that comment, and then later when you're calmer you come back to it and be like, is this something that I really need to work on, you know? If somebody told me like, hey, you procrastinate too much, like that one I could easily be like, oh, you're right, I do. That's a thing I also don't like about myself, just because it's like problematic for me getting stuff done and for my time. And I'd be like, I do need to work on that. And do I need to work on it because somebody else said it about me? No, but I need to work on it because it's a thing that's like not working for me. And there will be situations like if you're in school or you're at a job where like you do legitimately need to be able to receive constructive criticism from like your teacher or your boss or someone else who's working on the same project as you and stuff like that. But I would actually say that sometimes having the brain setup that I have where I've been so internally abusive to myself kind of gives me a fun superpower for free about receiving external criticism, where I'm now like, I'm like, well, you can't really say anything to hurt me because I've already said all of the worst possible things to myself, and they were worse coming from me because I'm supposed to love me. And so I think sometimes it can be something that you can turn to your advantage, where a lot of times I feel stronger when I'm listening to someone criticize me, especially if they're doing it in like a cruel way where either they have like a tone issue or like they shouldn't even be saying that thing. It's a lot easier for me now, after years of speaking to myself cruelly, it's a lot easier for me to recognize that same cruelty and that same abuse in someone else's voice and be like, no, that's wrong and I can't let it affect me. That's a bad thing and that's a problem that that person has, but like I don't need to let that stuff touch me or get under my skin because I've already let myself do that to me. I'm not going to let anybody else do that to me. So I think, you know, and I've talked in previous episodes about ways that my depression has made me stronger. And I think in some ways my critical voice, you know, like, do I wish I was born with no internal, like really mean voice? Yeah, I guess so. But having this has also in some ways led to a strength for me, because I am a lot of times much, like, it's much easier to let things bounce off of me, where I'm like, okay, that person's saying something because they have a problem and not because I have a problem. And like, I'll decide what my problems are, but I don't have to have a list of problems that was given to me by like the outside world and what they say I'm doing wrong. And so I think that's a situation where I'm grateful for my depression, or I think it's a lot of it is my anxiety, but that's a situation where I'm grateful for the stuff that's been going on in my head, because it has in a lot of ways made me stronger.
Good. Yeah, there are always going to be people out there who are trying to harm, right? There are always, people who, like on the internet, I guess more common thing is, bullying and
because they don't realize the impact of their actions, or because they feel bad and they want to make someone else feel bad too.
Some people just want to watch the world burn.
Sometimes it's just an accident, lots of reasons. But there's always going to be people out there saying stuff that is either mean, or they're saying it in a way that they shouldn't, even if their intention was good or their intention was fine. Yeah.
So there's the idea of like when it's external, you have to understand that there is constructive and then there's destructive, right? And you do not want to allow the destructive criticism to reach you. I mean, obviously, you got to be able to break it down. Again, take a breath, stand back, and take a look at it. Is this someone just trying to hurt you? Is this someone just saying it just to harm you? And why? Why would they? Do they not like you? Is there a problem? I don't know. Do you have an issue with them? I don't know. But at the same time, some people are just there to, cause issues, and it's kind of it's a thing that I wish wasn't there. But at the same time, like, not everyone's going to listen to the rule of like, hey, treat other people how you'd want to be treated, and some people
But I mean, I think even good people will make mistakes and accidentally say things when they shouldn't, or say something too mean. And it can be a strength too, where if you are a person who has a harsh voice for yourself, I feel like that's made me a lot kinder to other people, because I'm like, I would never want to expose anybody else to the way that I treat me. That would be awful,
Yeah, exactly. And I
like, I'll go on Instagram and write all these nice things about other people, and then I'll like look at my own Instagram and be like, oh, you're ugly, and it's like, oh my God, don't treat other people that way, and don't treat yourself that way. If I could just treat me like I treat other people, I think that would also be
and so it's a tough road, and it's something that you'd have to like learn it into yourself, where it's like you gotta be able to take it in stride. You gotta be able to put yourself at a distance from it, and kind of like give yourself room to breathe, because if you just let it pile on top of you, it's gonna drown you, and that's something you don't want to let happen, especially when you're already dealing with the internal, criticism, so. But
yeah, if you can turn it and you can use it to your advantage, then it's not necessarily like being depressed and anxious is a bad thing when it comes to criticism. It just means you have to know what's happening, and you have to know the way you're treating yourself and what that means, like the lessons that you can learn from that in terms of you walking about the world. Like, you learn, don't treat other people like I'm treating myself. Then hopefully you slowly learn, don't treat me like I'm treating me, and then you can hopefully also kind of develop, it's a little bit of a shortcut into developing a sense of self and a sense of your own your own decisions about what things are productive and not productive, or good and not good about your own personality. Because at a certain point you're like, oh, if I were to list everything that's bad about me, I would list everything, because my depression voice says everything is bad. And then it's so extreme that you're like, okay, well, that can't be real. So that's what I mean by like a shortcut into having to actually look at the issue in a more realistic way and say, okay, well, this isn't necessarily even a weakness. It's a strength and a weakness. It's just a different setup, and I need to know what's happening so that I can make it work to my advantage and not use it to hurt myself, and use it to not let other people hurt me.
Yeah. It's, you want to be able to take it in stride, like you said, and kind of just give yourself some room. And also, we all make mistakes. Like, I made mistakes. I was like, there's been moments where I was like, I probably shouldn't have said that, not to talk to somebody, not to apologize. But at the same time, like, we also want to try to be the goodness we want out of the world. We want to put it out there, so that way it comes back to us at the same time. I don't know if anybody believes that, but at the same time, like, I want to believe that, like, if we put some goodness out in the world, it'll come back to us at the same time. So maybe homework folks out there who are in Yikesland, give a compliment. Give instead of criticism, give a compliment out there, guys. Be the positive force, that we want in the world. It's a tough road. I don't know. Any final thoughts on it?
I just think that I guess my second homework would be, when you hear something critical from an external source, then do what Jelani was suggesting and take a moment and just breathe and consider, where is this coming from? Like, why is it coming in this form? And is this even useful to me? Rather than leaping to, oh, this critical voice sounds exactly like the critical voice in my head, and then it must be right. So, take that moment to think about, okay, how is the way that my brain is set up to listen and give and receive criticism, and how can I use that to my advantage? And I think that that you're taking a moment to pause is another good homework, where, give a compliment out there and then consider not taking a criticism out there as your homework. Yeah,
it's especially even when even if you don't have like an external criticism, don't go looking for one. But I mean, but at
they're everywhere.
They're everywhere. But at the same time, like, maybe even take a moment and like take a breath and like,
or do it to your own criticism.
With your like, internal,
Yeah. Listen to a thought that you had that was bad about you, and be like, where is this coming from? Why am I thinking this?
Yeah.
And is this even useful? And then if it is useful, the next step is to be like, how can I rephrase this in a way that is tone appropriate, so that it's still kind and still loving to either you or the person that you're giving criticism to, but also productive. Because if you say stuff in a mean voice, people usually aren't going to listen, or they're just going to feel bad. And I think that goes for you too, where if you say stuff in a mean voice to yourself, you're just going to feel bad, and you're not really going to be able to work on anything. So there's a lot of mental homework and mental sort of, I guess, disassembling the structures that we have built in our heads to do this. But it's definitely something that I want to work on, because I think I've come leaps and bounds when it comes to not getting as hurt by people's external criticism, even that from people that I love. But I have not come leaps and bounds about being kinder to myself with regards to stuff that's mental and not physical. And so that I would definitely like to, those are things that I want to dismantle and rebuild something better that works better. Is nice.
Yeah, you want to be able to take everything in stride and be able to like look inside and just like, oh, the internal criticism, it's not going to affect me as harsh as it used to, because I can take a moment and like look at it, and it's like, is this actually, is this too harsh? Is there a way I can rephrase it? Like you said, is this useful? Is this just a destructive, like, criticism to myself? Again, when we say that, our criticisms are internal and they are us, so it's about being able to condition ourselves to be able to know that maybe we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves. But that's like kind of like an end goal type of thing, where it's like, maybe we can have these criticisms but not say it in the way in the angsty teenager way.
Like that it's okay to have high standards for yourself, but like
it's okay to push yourself.
If you're hurting yourself, then it's not productive anymore.
Yeah, there's such a thing as constructive criticism. There's productive. There's, like you're saying, there's a way to look at it, but it's kind of a way of like conditioning yourself, being able to take it in, like take a moment and understand that, and also kind of take a moment and understand how you're criticizing other people. If you are, maybe you shouldn't all the time.
And or maybe your job requires you to give constructive criticism to other people, or like you're judging people's presentations, or you're educating kids, or you're just on a team with other people and you need to get feedback about your peers. And we can all probably get better at the way that we give that feedback so that it's helpful. But then also there's there's definitely a meta thing here for me where I feel bad for other people when they're being too critical of themselves. Like, I feel bad for other people who have impossibly high standards that are like, they're just trying to hurt themselves, But then for me, instead, I also hate me and would have the criticism that I have too high of standards. And so I feel worse. I feel doubly bad about it. You know what I mean? So, like, there's even another layer where I'm like, oh, you're a terrible person because of how you're being mean to yourself.
Yeah.
And that's just me being mean to myself all over again. So, but yeah, just find ways to be kinder to yourself and to other people, and to make sure that you are phrasing things in a way that is productive. And then I think, just taking time to also be grateful for the ways that you are stronger for the stuff that you've been through is also great, because that makes me feel better and feel like, oh, I'm not going through depression for nothing. It's not like, quote unquote, I'm going through it for a reason, but like I have found reason in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I will make good come of the situation that is already happening or has already happened. And I think that can be a really positive mindset, at least for me.
Yeah.
I encourage you guys to try it, see if it works for you.
We encourage you guys to do anything to better yourself, as always, right? So, well, take us home.
Well, thanks for being here with us again on this beautiful Tuesday, guys. As always, if you would like to reach out to us on Twitter or Facebook, we are there. We are on Instagram at Yikesland_podcast, or you can email us at yikesland@gmail.com with all of your criticism of this episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, we hope that you guys like listening to us. If you have thoughts that you'd like to share with us, topics that you would like to hear about, or
please.
That,
We'd love to hear
things
from you
that you'd
guys.
like to hear more or less about, or if you just want to share your experience with somebody, we would always love to hear from you. Even just a couple of sad emojis on Instagram, we're totally fine.
Yeah. And of course, as always, I think we've missed out on actually telling you guys this, but for the podcast fans and people who, wherever you're listening to it, it helps the podcast a lot. Just taking a second and like giving us a review or a little rating on where you're listening it from. It helps pushes us up into the the rankings, so that we can be seen more and possibly even be featured. So like, if you guys get a chance, if you have a second, if you're listening on iTunes or any other type of podcast service, give it a like, give it its rating, give it a review. Reviews are the world to a podcast. So helping this podcast grow bigger and get spread out there a little bit more, so we can have more people kind of be a part of this kind of community of people just kind of talking and getting to know each other and kind of enjoying the views from Yikesland, if you will. And final thought for me, there's been kind of like a lot of negative stuff out there recently, and a lot of like it's been feeling a little dark with like a lot of different things that have been going on in the world, and things have been going on. Try to be good out there to each other, everyone, and try to respect each other, and try to put the goodness out there so it comes back to all of us, because there's already plenty of darkness out there, and we want to be kind of like, while we are this emotionally compromised, sad group, we can put goodness out there still, and you still can put goodness in the world, even just being here with us every Tuesday and every single day can be creating a positive force out there. So please, if you guys can, just be a positive force, be something good out there in a world that can seem a little dark. So
if you guys need a resource, if you are thinking bad, dark things, considering suicide, please reach out to the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Their number is 1-800-273-8255. It's toll-free. It's completely confidential. They're available 24/7. I think sometimes we use euphemisms to talk about suicide on this podcast, which is fine. I prefer to use the word suicide and think about it in very real terms because of my own personal history. But, I don't think that anyone here is pretending that that's something that is so far away or is anything shameful. So it's, it's something that can and should be discussed, and it is always better to ask for help as soon as you can. So that is a good resource. Reach out to medical professionals, and don't feel any kind of shame about asking for help when you are feeling that way, because that is I have felt and been suicidal before, and that's not something that I ever want people to be ashamed of or think that that's why we use euphemisms and say like dark place or dark thoughts and stuff like that. So just wanted to put that out there for you guys as well.
Sure. Well, folks, thank you so much for being here and joining us and supporting the podcast. This has been your host, Jelani Hoon, along with host
Chris Fung. We forgot to say our names in the beginning, so we're saying them now extra.
One more time. My name is Jelani Hoon.
Oh no, what's my name?
Oh no, check the bar below.
Oh, there it is.
There it is. Thank you so much for being here, guys, and supporting us. And we'll see you guys next week, and enjoy the views from Yikesland.
Have a good week.